Hi, welcome. I'm Andrew Gaule. This is one of a series of discussions with executives who are leading strategic change, innovation, and venturing. We will hear from them about an introduction to themselves and their organisation, and we will then be discussing the impact and the mitigation of this pandemic crisis. In the live sessions, we have questions and in-depth discussions with senior peers during this session. We have now edited out those sort of discussions for confidentiality of those participants. The resources and podcasts are available with videos on the Aimava Resources website. Please enjoy, make comments, and do get in touch. Thank you. We usually have some content, some thought-provoking content, which today we've got from Ulrich Quay from BMW iVentures and from Steve Newbury from Williams Advanced Engineering. I've just got a couple of slides that I wanted to share to give some perspective of what Aimava have been doing and the angles where we come from around this sort of topic. So as for about 20 years now, I've been working with large corporates in their corporate venturing, innovation, startup sort of space. And as Sam just mentioned, over the last 2 years, we've been running roundtable discussions, workshops, one we did at Williams. And Samantha and I have also taken executives to Norway to see, as a lot of you will know, the penetration of EVs there now is over 50%. And also Sam and I were in China in October and November last year, seeing neo-electric cars running round tables and seeing the scale and the speed of the EV infrastructure and that there. And as we really know that the transformation from internal combustion engine to electric vehicles to autonomous electric vehicles is going to mean a transformation in our industries, the automotive, the oil, the servicing, becoming very data rich, and intelligence and all of those things, particularly when we move to autonomous. So we're going to see sectors like energy moving from just providing energy down from big power stations to devices to distributed energy, where electric vehicles become batteries on wheels, become electric storage on wheels, and of course the infrastructure we need for these for providing this for these services. And this cartoon came from the session we did in Norway, where the insights there now, it's not about range anxiety, but it's about queue anxiety. So how do you create a good customer experience and that for users of EVs? So just need to leave somebody in. So one of the things that we've written about, and I wrote a book 2 or 3 years ago, which is what we term innovative new value chain. So as industry changes, we're going to have new devices which are throwing off lots of data. So electric cars, other examples are in the health sector for health monitoring devices, which are going to be throwing smart data and that into the cloud. We're going to have changes to how the finance model works within these sort of sectors. So pay for use, car sharing, health outcome sort of solutions. And one of our upcoming sessions is with Munich Re on the 23rd of July, when we're going to be discussing about those changing finance models. And as we know, the consumer experience changes with EV. So bringing together technologies, corporates and startups is going to be creating these new global platforms and solutions. Now, we've done some work in the past. This is an example of one extract of the electric vehicle value chain. Technology in the batteries, new components, new assembly, new services about charging, sharing, and when autonomous vehicle comes in, and then of course the recycling and the full end of life. And with the speakers we've got today, looking at the technologies, looking at the service models, and we'll get a lot of insights in those sort of areas. Some of the work that we've done before, and Samantha just touched on, and that the scale and the speed and the depth of work that's come from China is an area we've looked at. And the links here, or if you hold your phone up to the screen to the presentation, you can use the QR code to link to these presentations and these previous things. This is one example where we looked at the patents and the intellectual property along that value chain, and just looking at electrification granted patent portfolios. BYD on the left, which is a Chinese automotive manufacturer, 1,400 patent families in China, the US, and globally compared to Tesla. And I'm sure we can look and compare for BMW or other sectors in that as well. So that's just a very brief overview of the sorts of things we've done within Aimava. And really, we believe it's about orchestrating the connectivity between different technologies, different startups, and that to create these sort of new value chains. So that's my brief introduction. Before we move into asking Ulrich to present and that from BMW, any questions or perspectives or points of clarity that I need to raise before we launch into their areas? No, I see some nodding, so it's all sort of fine. Okay, Ulrich, welcome. Good to see you again.
Good to be here.
Good to see you. So it'd be great if you could give us an insight and perspective then from BMW in that, please. I know I was with you I was just looking up, we did a podcast back in 4 years ago now, I think it was, when I was with you there in Silicon Valley, and we did a podcast. So it'd be good to get an update and people could hear about how things have changed maybe and that over the time. But over to you, Ulrich.
Happy to. So while you do this, let me briefly introduce myself, Ulrich Quay. I've been running BMW iVentures since 2011, set up the group. Our history is basically two phases. The first one from 2011 to 2016, when we were quite a common, usual corporate venture unit, investing from the balance sheet and getting approvals from BMW Corporation for investments. And the second phase has started in 2016, when we got a separate venture capital fund, 370 million. Since then, we act like a financial VC, but have BMW as sole LP. And the slides that you're going to see is part of a project, I would call it. BMW are currently considering allowing third-party investors, so that BMW is not the sole investor, but that in addition to BMW, we have a number of other investors from the automotive ecosystem. That has not been finally decided and approved. So this is basically a draft for potential APs that has been done a couple of months ago, so it's not entirely up to date. On this page, you see on the right-hand side some of our portfolio companies. The ones highlighted are unicorns. In the meantime, we have two more that have come up. We had also two more exits that happened recently. Mapillary sold to Facebook, and Move It being sold to Intel Capital for over $1 billion. That's looking pretty good. We have 53 portfolio companies by now, and I think 10 unicorns and 8 exits. So it's not entirely up to date anymore. So this is the left. On the left hand side, you see the approach of us investing. Since we are focused on mobility, we have a deep domain expertise, but we can take our decisions depending on financial upside. We don't have to invest in certain areas if BMW wants us to. The slide that is currently on shows the potential setup of such an LP structure, but that is actually, as we said, is still in the making. BMW is doing some of it, and we have external parties, and some of them have already expressed interest. We'll do the second part. The thinking for us is why we do this. We think that it's beneficial for portfolio companies that they can not only connect with a single OEM, but also to a number of other players in the ecosystem. We think it's useful, and it's also sometimes startups are concerned that they are too affiliated with one OEM, especially at an early stage, And if you are a multi-LP fund that has multiple strategic investors, basically this is being addressed easily. So we think this makes us even better investor, and it would be good for our fund to be able to allow third-party investors. I'm going to move to the next slide. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask them. We don't see the slide, but there we go. These are the investment areas that we invested in. I would say pretty much everything you would expect from an OEM. For us, the bar is always, is this somehow beneficial for BMW? And it could be the purchasing division, it could be the sales division, or manufacturing, or the R&D division. Our bar is always, can we benefit from the service or from this product? And if the answer is yes, we can do it. And basically that describes our investment mandate, and those 8 areas, I think you can put everything in it, everything that is relevant for an OEM. Energy services, there has been a change recently. Is being replaced by sustainability. We have looked at the sector for the past 4 years and have not found an investment that fulfills our requirement. And we think that sustainability is becoming increasingly important. So we are focusing on that. So we could still invest in energy if that's a sustainable investment. Basically, our goal is to be an automotive expert investor. So we often, it happens that some of the really big VCs, they approach us and ask us for our input, or whether we want to co-invest. That's where we always wanted to be. The successful financial VCs, having a close relationship with us and them considering us as an added value for an investment round. I'm not saying that this is always the case for every single investment, but we have a number of co-investments with the top venture investors, and I think that's where we want it to be. So I think page 11, we can move to page 11, which shows our proprietary deal flow. A lot of it is from there are 2 main sources, I would say. One of the sources, investors reaching out to us. And the other one is us actively looking at potential investments. I would say 80-90% of the investments are from those 2 sources. And then we go through a diligence process where we can, as many corporates, we can include our corporation, but we don't have to. So in many cases, there's a lot of added value in including the experts. But I think the important thing is that we don't have to do what they think. Oftentimes we do, but there are cases when company says left and we go right, or the other way around. So we look at a ton of companies, probably more than 10,000 according to our database, and we invested in a little more than 50 right now. So it's as you said, which is pretty typical that you look at 100 and invest in 1. That's often the ratio. It's similar for us. And on the next page you see our the goals of why BMW set us up. It's market intelligence, open innovation, ecosystem. Probably not very different from any other corporate ventures. Then we can skip we have a couple of quotes from senior execs why they think we are useful. We can probably skip that. And then the next page shows you the potential structure, how we see BMW and potential LPs, when this is one day approved, or if this is approved, it's not decided yet. And on page 15, we have an overview of our team. We are 11 people, 8 of them in California, working from our home office right now, and 3 of them in Munich, in our Munich office covering Europe. So investing in Europe and in the US.
Excellent. Thank you, Ulrich.
You're welcome.
Question, Sam, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Ulrich. That was an excellent presentation. Just curious as to your market allocation for the fund. You've got 90% focused on the US market, 10% focused on Europe. We were in China at the end of last year, as Andrew mentioned, with a fund called Sinovation, who used to have a presence in Silicon Valley. They told us that they are pretty much completely out of the US now. And given that BMW has such a significant presence in Asia, China in particular, is there a plan in the future to look at that market? Or is there a reason why you're not there at the moment?
No, there's a concrete plan in place. We are currently having discussions with a number of potential investors. And if we go to China, that would be with other Chinese LPs. We would not do it just with BMW, but we would include public and private LPs in China. Excellent. And that could happen next year. It has not been. We have to decide that in the second half of the year. But I've been to China 2 or 3 times in the past couple of months before Corona, and there's. I agree. It's very interesting. It's one of the biggest, by far the biggest markets for BMW worldwide. It's important to offer products that appeal locally, and that use technology that's produced locally. So I agree. That's something we are interested in. And we would have it run by a local managing partner, and basically have the decision making would be similar to our decision making. We have a partner meeting, and then there's a vote on it, and the Chinese partner is just one of the partners. So I think we have the setup to do it, and I agree. It's absolutely interesting to explore this.
Great.
Excellent, Ulrich. Thanks very much.
Workshops, we've been discussing a lot of the items that I highlighted in my book, Purpose to Performance, Innovative New Value Chain. In that, I outline what's the purpose of why corporate should be venturing, what's the right process, central are the people, the partners, and the performance measures that you need to consider when you're doing corporate venturing, investing in startups, or partnering within this ecosystem. I'm very pleased to say that I've had testimonials from the Vice Chairman and Chief Scientific Officer at PepsiCo, the head of GE Ventures, an executive committee member of DSM. In the book, there's also resources to over 150 podcasts, videos, plus glossary and documents which are of real value to organizations and individuals that are driving strategic change, innovation and venturing.
So Steve, can we hand over to you now?
So I'm Steve Newbury. I'm working in sort of strategy and innovation at Williams Advanced Engineering. I've been working for Williams for about 7 years actually. So Williams Advanced Engineering has grown quite a lot during that time, and is now sort of involved in quite a few projects, mainly in the kind of performance automotive sector, but also in defense and aerospace and motorsport. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a sort of broader perspective of value chains in how I see value chains in the future transport and energy sectors, a bit of an introduction, and then I'll go into a bit more specific detail around Williams Advanced Engineering and the things that we're doing. So just firstly to say, today the UK's Committee on Climate Change published their annual report, and there are certain recommendations that came out of that report today, none which would be terribly surprising to anybody, I don't think, but they did mention the kind of importance to strengthen the energy networks in the UK, and that's to support electrification of transport, but also the electrification of home heating as well, because in the UK from 2025 you're not going to be able to fit gas boilers into homes, so that's all becomes kind of part of how that affects the supply and demand. They also stated that they'd like to a full phase out of petrol and diesel cars and vans by 2032, which is slightly earlier than the government has currently said. Obviously, there's no guarantees that the government are going to adopt these recommendations, but I think it just continually shows and the direction of travel, I think, for legislation. So as the automotive industry becomes more reliant on electricity infrastructure, we know that new value chains are going to cross between the energy sector and become very important to the transport sector of the future. These new stakeholders including a raft of new digital kind of intermediary services, are going to want to take a stake in the value chain, stake in the market around the operation of vehicles. And we can kind of see this today. There's a number of new startups around kind of operators and digital services which are kind of popping up. Just like today, consumer groups can be kind of segmented based on vehicle type and usage. And the predictions are, or some people are predicting, that there's going to be less private vehicle ownership in the future. Some are predicting 30% of cars are going to be owned by operators in the future. So there's going to be a significant mass market where the young people of today, as they move forward into, either owning or kind of being more interested in mobility, are kind of more interested in mobility than they are of ownership. So in terms of how we understand the technologies that we need to build for the future, we need to engage with these operator owners to ensure that we properly understand how the industry is developing, and then what technologies we need to support these kind of their business models and are going to be attractive to their customers. And then this all feeds down into charging infrastructure, but also into the vehicles and the way that the batteries are designed. So how consumers recharge their vehicles is clearly important when determining what recharge infrastructure is needed, with the obvious places like homes and workplaces being going to be a much more kind of additional, going to drive an additional requirement to how vehicles are refueled today. So the segmentation in customer behavior around vehicle type is going to kind of drive specific battery design solutions. And then we can kind of learn from how other different groups are sort of mitigating their battery charge anxiety, for example, with their mobile phones, where people are plugging in a lot of the time and just topping up, or as Andrew said earlier, around queue anxiety. So how does queue anxiety change the kind of technology and that we need to put into vehicles or into infrastructure to overcome that? So the smart grid, in the future, the smart grid is going to have the ability to determine the priority at which EVs are recharged, and then at what cost per kilowatt hour. If you could move on a slide, Andrew, that'd be great. So at Williams Advanced Engineering, we're well known for designing, developing, engineering performance electric vehicles for the road and for the track. But our view of performance is it kind of expanding beyond the conventional view of what performance is. And I'd now include other attributes such as fast charging, battery longevity, reliability, and even low cost of ownership. And the sort of design of these batteries to enable the new business models and support vehicle operators and maintenance and end of life. So battery designs for the future can be tailored to specific customer uses and specific vehicles. For example, hybrid batteries, where we have a mix of power and energy, is optimized, but potentially batteries can also be modular and connected. So just as energy companies are rolling out smart meters, electric vehicles are now going to be part of this connected energy ecosystem, with data and predictive software being at the heart, and the real value of being able to optimize the supply and demand and that pricing triangle. And then moving on to lightweighting. So it'd be no surprise to you that at Williams we're very focused on developing we see future EV platforms as being lightweight. We've also developed sort of modular architectures which can improve the economics of bringing sort of lightweight vehicles to market. Modularity can also include the way that the battery forms part of the vehicle structure and the way it's serviced and upgraded. So the economics of new platform designs are kind of such that, or are kind of enabled also by new materials and manufacturing processes. These can be the kind of key ingredients for unlocking radical new architectures. So it's something we spend a lot of time on, is working with the supply chains, looking at materials innovation and manufacturing process innovation. And we've also developed our own patents and processes for taking that forward into, economically lightweight structures. So then moving forwards, in the years and decades ahead, as we move forward to full autonomy and the legislation that's going to come to improve resource utilization, cars potentially will be able to automatically recharge themselves at large recharging centers. You already see large recharging centers in China, where you've got literally hundreds of taxis being recharged at the same time. You could potentially do that more efficiently with autonomy. And then the power requirements of the grid are going to need to change to be able to kind of address that kind of new requirement. And then the design of cars and car platforms is going to radically change in the future as we reflect new certification requirements and infrastructure. So the shift in mobility of people and goods is a really exciting kind of future for the automotive industry, really exciting, and working with the energy industry sector will be sort of key to that too. So I've got three kind of take-home messages. First one being that transport technology innovations are needed to support and also nudge future customer behaviours. The second point is, as future EV customer groups segment and we understand their segmentation better, their behaviour is going to determine the need for on-vehicle technology and recharging infrastructure. So we really need to understand this consumer behaviour is absolutely key. And then governments are more likely to be influencing this by supporting climate positive behaviours. I think we're going to see an increase in that in the future. And then in the much longer term, as we move to full autonomy, we're going to unlock completely new operator value chains, at which point the infrastructure is going to need to be reimagined at that point. So that's just some sort of general kind of overviews from William's perspective. Obviously, we're doing a lot more behind the scenes, and a lot of it's confidential. So for for companies that wanted to engage with us, then we can share more under NDA.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Steve. Thanks very much, Ulrich, for your perspectives on that there, which have created lots of stimulating sort of thoughts and perspectives and that here. Okay, well, thank you very much. Just to thank Ulrich and Steve for really stimulating the conversation, providing us with the great content, which then sparked the discussions that we had from our peers around the call. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.
Samantha.
Great. Thanks all. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and do subscribe to the podcasts or to the videos and look at Aimava resources. Feel free to drop us an email or a message and be very happy to follow up. Thank you.